I put my employer in a really terrible situation, and I felt badly about that. Many of you have heard me speak, and one thing that I say is I was not a very good assistant. I was definitely burning out during that time period. I was doing the work of two people. Things happen. Hi there. I wanted to share two stories about two different patients because I get told all the time I have the funniest stories or just the weirdest stories about patients. And I thought, you know what? Let me just bring these two people to life because there are lots of times when we're dealing with a patient and they're very, very difficult to handle. And I know in my case, I always second guess myself. And looking back, I realized that I probably could have handled things better. And in some situations, and maybe I'll tell more stories in future podcasts, but in other situations, I did everything that I possibly could. So I thought if I shared some of these stories with you, you could learn from them and perhaps do things a little bit better. And of course, if you have any suggestions for how I could have handled things, I would love to hear them too. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you very much. Make a comment and let me know what you think. And if you're listening through the podcast, just shoot me a message and tell me, or maybe I'll see you on the road. So without further ado, let me talk to you about patients who drove me crazy and then also can drive other people crazy. But most importantly, I hope that they make you laugh. Okay, so patient number one. This was back when I was assisting. So I was doing double duty, as many of you understand. You know what that's like. So we're assisting in the back, and then we're running up front to collect payment when everything is done. And of course, we were short-staffed. And of course, this happens when we're short-staffed. Of course, this happens when I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, right? So many of you have heard me speak. And one thing that I say is I was not a very good assistant. Let me just say this. I wasn't a great assistant. I was a passable assistant. I was the kind of person that you're going to throw back there and I can help out. I know how to suction. I know how to wrestle the tongue. I know all of that stuff, but I wasn't the best. Okay. But I was passable. I don't think I would get written up for it. I would be a solid performer for you. But in this situation, I obviously was not doing this every day. And so, things happen. So let me just set the scene. You already know it's a busy day doing lots of things, right? So this was back when we printed out the schedule, and in the morning we would write out everything on the schedule that we needed, any notes or anything, we would compare. And I would always make a note because I was setting up ahead of time before the appointments. And I would always make a note of what side of the mouth we would be working on. So when you're assisting, for those of you who maybe haven't done it, or maybe it's been so long you don't remember, before you give an injection, it's probably a good idea. Most people like it when you get the area numb beforehand. So of course you put the gel on. Sometimes you have them rinse, but back in the day, this was when we would take the cotton tip applicator and we would put gel and we would, apply it. So remember, this is a full day. And if you can picture it, I'm looking at my schedule ahead of time and the whole day is nothing but left side, right? In my brain, my whole day is nothing but left side. So hold that thought for a second. So we're working on 14, 18, all this, all the stuff on the left side. So we're getting in there and here he comes. So we'll call him Joe. Here comes Joe. He's a grumpy old man, but he's very nice. And I never had a problem with him before this day. So obviously Joe is going to be a problem today. And I was a problem for Joe. So it is what it is. So Joe comes walking in. He doesn't like being there. He's had a lot of work done. He's older. Like everything that he's had to have done has either broken down, we've had to replace. In certain cases, this is like the second time we've had to replace things. I mean, when you live that long, and when he was growing up and getting dentistry, it wasn't the best material. It's the best for the time, but obviously new material, right? So he wasn't happy to be there. And we were working on his upper molar and just unhappy to be there. But he's cracking jokes. I take him back, put the bib on, everything. I'm talking. And as I'm talking, because this is before I knew better, I should have confirmed with him what we're doing, what side we're doing, what tooth number and everything. But remember, in my brain, I had looked at the huddle, the schedule ahead of time, and I had seen nothing but left side. Well, guess what? We were working on number 3. So number 3, for those of you that don't know, is on the right side. So I put in my brain, 3 became 14. Okay. Not good. Not good. You can go see where this is going. So I went ahead and I was talking and we were having a good conversation about something. And I went ahead and said, okay, open. And I stuck the gel on the left side. Well, Joe knows we're working on the right side. So Joe immediately is looking at me and I could kind of see a look in his face, like the face changed, but I just stuck a whole bunch of gel in his mouth. So I'm thinking maybe that's it, right? Okay. So we take it out. He's getting ready to rinse. And this poor guy, because my doctor comes in and thinks the gel was applied to the right side. So my doctor knows what's going on, went ahead and applied the gel, or didn't apply the gel, went ahead and gave him a shot. Left side is all numb and ready to go. Right side, not numb, not great. So he was not happy. I left the room because I'm going back and forth between helping the hygienist and, of course, making sure that nobody had left a message, all the stuff that you do when you're the only one running between front and back. And I hear hushed conversations. Okay, well, all right, fine. So my boss comes out and he meets me at the front desk. And I said, are you ready? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he wants to get ready. You let them sit for a little bit to get numb. And he goes, Joe doesn't want you to work on him. And I was like, what? Totally floored. What? And he says, you don't know the sides of the mouth. You don't know your tooth numbers, basically. And my boss is laughing, but he's also like, come on, because really now I'm causing problems for him. So he's laughing, but he's like, oh, I got to deal with this. So I said, oh my God. And he said, we're working on number 3. And I said, oh my goodness. I said, I looked at the schedule and I explained to him what I explained to you. And he said, I get it. But Joe is back there saying he does not want you to work on him. And I said, okay, well, we literally have no other assistant. There's nobody else. And he cannot work on him by himself. And I said, I will go back there and I will apologize because I'm not putting up a fight. I was totally wrong, and I'll own it. So he said, I think you're going to have to, but Joe's kind of grumpy, so we'll see where it goes. So I said, do you want to come back there with me? Are you okay with me going back there by myself? And he said, I'm just going to kind of hover in the doorway so he sees, because there is kind of this old school about Joe. And I think he wanted the boss to see that I was accepting responsibility. It's fair. I don't have any judgment on this. It's fine. I totally screwed this up. So I apologize. Joe, I'm so sorry. In my mind, we've been working on the left side all day. Same thing I just told you. I very much apologize. And I promise that this will not happen again. And he said, I know it's not going to happen again because you're not working on me. Okay, well, now what, right? So I said, I'm really sorry again, Joe. I promise you, I know exactly what tooth number we're working on. And I went to the x-rays, which were up on the light. So we didn't have all this, we didn't have digital stuff. It was still film. And I pointed to it and I said, I know this is the one we're working on. I am so sorry. Again, totally apologetic. And he said, well, I don't want you anywhere near my mouth. And he was holding to it. And so, of course, my boss had to step in and say, we really don't have anyone else. So if you don't want to get this done because of her, we're going to have to reschedule. But right now we're down an assistant. I don't know when we're going to be able to get you back in. And my boss, to his credit, said, I'm watching everything that she does. This was an honest mistake. She's not done this before. Do you mind if we just give it a shot? And you could tell he was not happy, but he reluctantly agreed. So we worked on him. There's no small talk coming out of me. There was nothing. I was sweating. I watched everything. I mean, that burr, I watched everything, right? So suction, his mouth was probably so dry because I was suctioning everything. So nothing got by me on that appointment. So we go ahead and, walk him out and everything. And this is the 2 appointment time. When you're doing a crown, way back then, you don't have same day crowns. I mean, some of you are still doing, 2 appointments, but back then everything was 2 appointments. And so schedule him for the next appointment. And Joe, who previously was a very nice person to me, looked at me and said, are you going to be here that day? And yes, Joe, I'm here every day. And he said, but you're not working on me, right? And I said, this is the kind of appointment where if we don't have an assistant, he could actually handle this himself. Good. So Joe went off, and I felt terrible the whole day. So Joe came back. True to form, we didn't have an assistant, and the doctor had to go ahead and put that crown in by himself. He wasn't thrilled. And listen, this was totally a disciplinary action had he chosen to make it so. But my boss is very much a teacher. And so this was probably the best learning opportunity I could have. Okay, so Joe, comes in, everything's fine. He gets his tooth and all that. So years, maybe not years, maybe months later, he's back for his cleaning. He needs to get another thing done. So now it is to the point where he doesn't even want to talk to me about treatment plan presentation, which is, financial presentation, which is pretty much like what I did most of the time. So basically he made it clear, Teresa's not coming near me. So for the rest of my career, and that at the office that Joe was at, he was at we actually ended up selling that one location. So I never got to see Joe after that, but I never worked on him again. And in fact, anytime I had to collect money or anything from him again, he never looked me in the eye. I was pretty much dead to him. So that was a really good example of how a patient can really let their disdain known for an employee. So what I did learn, though, is that it's okay for a patient to not like you. I mean, did I give him a reason to not like me? Sure. But there are times when a patient just gels more with one person than the other, and that's okay. Throughout my career working with, multiple people, patients have favorites. Some patients don't like to joke around. I joke around a lot. I don't rub everybody the right way. One of my employees the managers that I was helping to grow into the position, not funny at all, very straight laced, but very professional. Some patients really were fine with that. So it's okay for patients to have preferences. What the problem is when it impacts the job. So I just want to kind of put a twist on it. I mean, what would have actually happened had I been the assistant and I was, let's just say I was the excellent assistant. Nothing was going to go wrong. What would have happened if I'd done that one time and there is no assistant coming in to help? The doctor, unfortunately, would have had to make a decision. Is it going to be Joe or is it going to be me? Because you can't hire a temp assistant for one day whenever Joe decides to come in and get work. And so thankfully, I never put him in that position. We've never had that. But I always thought about what would have happened had Joe said it's either her or me. I am sure that my doctor would have had long talks with him to explain and all of that. And if that hadn't worked, I am sure that he would have said, I don't think this is gonna work. I just know from working with my employer for so long that he's not going to fire or let an employee go that was meaning to do well. And it was an honest mistake just because a patient says so. So I really was not in fear of losing my job, but the guilt in me from causing not just pain to a patient, that's tremendous, but also I put my employer in a really terrible situation and I felt badly about that. And then just after that, just the thought that there's somebody out there that dislikes me enough to actually say, back off. That's not cool, right? That's not a good feeling for you to have. So bottom line is Joe and I were able to work around each other. I do think had there been sort of a forced situation that I think the doctor would have sided with me, but that's not cool for Joe. And so I do wish that he had been a little bit more understanding that I really was in a zone. And I was in a zone because I was thinking about what was on TV that night. I was in a zone because I was focused on nothing but tooth. I was focused on the wrong tooth, as you can hear. So that's one of my more humbling stories of being a dental assistant and kind of messing up. So it's kind of related to being a not great dental assistant. But what it also is related to is that I was super busy because I was overworked and I was definitely burning out during that time period. Thankfully, we were able to hire somebody again, but I was doing the work of two people. And if you're a very driven office manager, you're probably doing the work of three people anyways in your job. So I was doing everything: receptionist, checkout person, financial coordinator, treatment plan presenter, and I'm cleaning rooms and turning over rooms in between. I mean, you guys know what those days are like. I was never going to be able to keep that pace up for a long time. And thankfully I didn't have to. So I do feel for those of you who right now are doing double duty, because it's not easy. And there has to be a time for you to be able to say, this is not cool. I don't want to do this anymore. I need 20 minutes. I need a half hour, something like that. I think you're well within your rights to do that, because not only is it hard on you mentally, but it's hard on you physically to be running back and forth like that. And, I was young and had tons of energy back then, but if I had to do that now, I would not be a happy camper at all. So that's the story of Joe. Well, let me talk to you about Barb. So Barb is a patient that I had actually, she was pretty entertaining. I mean, I will say she was pretty entertaining. She did make me laugh, but she didn't make anyone else laugh. She made me laugh. So I was a consultant for an office. This was back when I was full service consulting. And this was one of my clients, and I was there for observation day and then a coaching day and all that kind of thing. And it was a regular visit. And I had heard about Barb during meetings, because one of the things we'd focus on was, how's your financial policy and all of that. And tell me about the people who always try to get away with, financial shenanigans. And Barb's name always came up. So Barb had a reputation of basically telling you what you needed to hear in order for her to be able to walk out the door without paying anything. Okay, so you may have your own Barb. So the stories that they used to tell me were just funny. I mean, they were frustrating, but you know how some of your patients, you just have a good time talking about them, so they really turn into like the story. So I had heard stories about Barb. And by the way, Barb, one of her relatives, I forget which one, was really good friends with the doctor. And so I don't want to say Barb was in a protected class, but she definitely got away with more than the average patient. Okay, so keep that in mind. So I had heard, things about Barb, such as she'll tell you she's going out to the car to get a checkbook, and then she'll never come back. Or she'll pull out a credit card, but it won't be a credit card. It'll be like some card from like a rewards program or something. Obviously not a credit card to make payment. She would pretend and all this stuff. So it was actually kind of comical. So during the morning, and we're getting ready for the day, we're looking at the schedule together, kind of huddling, and the receptionist turns to me and she says, "Oh my gosh, you get to meet Barb today." So I was super excited. So Barb comes in. She's bubbly, very fun. They introduce her to me, and we just have a good time waiting in the waiting room. There was a little bit of wait, so I'm out there, and I said, "How's the practice? Everything? What do you think? You've been coming here a long time. You're practically family. Give me your thoughts. This is perfect because you're so close to the practice. I would like to hear from you what we can do differently." She had great ideas about the waiting area, and she was suggesting like these designs, new design options for, the chairs and all that. And I was like, oh, actually, this actually is pretty nice. And it was about the flow of the office. So that was kind of fun. Then she was telling me about how the two receptionists up front were always hounding her. And she said that she wished they would stop hounding her. She said, I'm tired of getting all the reminders. I'm tired of getting all of this. And I said, "What, have you said anything?" And she said, "No, I hate to be a bother." And I'm already laughing inside because she's already a bother to them. She just doesn't know it. And I said, "Well, what kind of reminders are you getting? Like, I heard you say appointment reminders. Are you getting statements? Like, what do you?" And you obviously know where I'm going. So she said, "Yeah, I get a bill from them every month." And I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's how it works. Like, you're supposed to pay it, right? So I said, well, that's normal. That's normal for us to send a bill to someone who has a balance. And she said, "But I pay every time I come in." And I thought, oh, wow. Okay. So here, let me just take a step back. Barb is a certified expert in lying. She will look right at you, and she will look you in the eye, and she will say something, and you will believe her because it sounds so sincere, right? And of course, as you go in your management career, you will learn to spot Barbs, right? So, but for the two younger receptionists who had never run into Barbs, and I have a whole slew of non-payers that I could talk about one day, they've never seen this kind of pathological lying before. So for them, like, it was a real broken promise every time she said she was going to go do something. And I said, that's really strange. I should check with the software. Did you get a statement recently? And she said, yeah, before this appointment. Well, I knew she had a balance. So before this appointment, so did you happen to bring it with you? And she said, no. I just leave them at home. I take care of the balance when I come in. Okay. So that should have been fun. And I said, that's so strange that they would bill you and still, you pay the money though, and there's a receipt and everything. And I said, I'm going to check the software because we have it specifically set up to not send a statement if the patient has a zero balance. And I'm so confused because if it's happening to you, Barb, it's got to be happening to other people. And this is, we would never want to upset our patients. And I'm laying it on thick because I already know the situation, right? And she kind of looked at me and she's like, oh, okay. I said, when you come out, I want to go over your account together. I said, I cannot have a patient upset about their bill. And besides, the doctor, that's even worse. And, so she trotted off to her hygiene appointment. She had her hygiene visit and the girls up front are laughing. And I'm going, you know what? Yeah, it's funny. And we were laughing, but I said, let's see if we can do some habit resetting with Barb. And I didn't know if I'd be able to do this because pathological liars do not change their behavior. They are pathological. So Barb comes up after appointment and she said, so I got a statement from you guys. I guess I owe you. And she said, and the one receptionist that was handling her said, well, you also owe us for today. And she said, so, the total is, and she gave the total. And as we had trained them, how would you like to take care of that today? How will you be paying today? Not this, do you want to pay us today? None of that. Just how would you like to take care of this today? And she started with the options of, we can take your credit card, write me a check. And of course, Barb knows all this. And she said, well, I think I left a card with you on file last time I was here. Well, this is news to all of us. There is no card on file, nowhere. And so I said, my coaching to the receptionist was, don't fight her. Lean into it and pretend to look for it, just lean into it. So it's not that I want you to lie, really, kind of, but see, here's the thing. This is the only way to get through to them is to show them that they can't get away with it. Because right now for the last, I don't even know how long, she has gotten away with it. And so she fully expects to get away with it again. And I'll just skip ahead. Spoiler alert here. We did not get payment from her this today, but because of what we did, she never did this again. She got to the point where she was paying at the time because what we did was we made it so uncomfortable for her. So, she's looking around, the receptionist is looking around, she's looking around everywhere for, she said, I don't see anything. I don't see any credit card on file. I would have made sure it was in this log here that's locked up. And I see other people here, but I don't see you, Barb. And so Barb goes, oh, okay, well, I'm pretty sure. And this is when Barb does the normal thing that is very frustrating for us, where she blames other people who aren't there. Well, it must have been the last girl, or it must have been the girl who's not working today. And when patients do that, they're doing that deliberately because the person is not there. So they're just looking to pass the buck and get the heck out. That's really what Barb was doing. And the other girl was in the back and she heard it. I mean, you can still see her. So she's right there. She's like, Barb, I'm telling you, I don't remember that at all. So we were on the same page. And so she said, well, I don't have my credit card with me. I'm going to have to call you with it. First she said, it's not with me. I left, my purse is down in the car. Okay. So, okay. All right. Which is weird because she did have a little purse, but maybe she means her big purse. Who knows? Whatever. And so as we had talked about, I said, okay, well, here's what we can do. I'm going to go ahead and print this statement out so that we don't have to mail it to you. But if you've got the credit card down, why don't you just go get it and bring it up? And then we can put it on file and do all of this. And of course, I'm being very, very helpful, as you do. And, you could see the wheels turning on her. And she said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come down. I'm going to go back up and I'll come back up with the card. Okay. So we knew what was going to happen. And so the receptionist, who was a little bit more bold, the one that was in the back, she had a bag of trash ready. And we had prepared. We had talked about this. And as Barb exits to go to the parking lot, she has to go downstairs to go to the parking lot. Here comes the other receptionist holding her bag of trash, and she's holding a drink like she's going to throw away. And she's like, oh, Barb, hold the door. I'm going out, And so there she goes. And I had nothing to do but wait until they came back in, or, one of them came back in. So what had happened was the receptionist walked down the stairs with her, and the trash can, of course, the trash dumpster was, of course, out there at the end of the parking lot. And so she said, basically she was escorting her out to make sure. So what it was, and we knew that the car, there was 100% chance that she was not going to come back upstairs with the card. But what we were doing was showing that we're kind of on to you. And so it was just to make her uncomfortable because this cannot continue to go on. And by the way, we did have full permission from the doctor to kind of get this going. So the receptionist, goes to throw it away. As expected, Barb got into her car. And so she walking by to go back inside. And she said, Barb, do you want me to take the card back up? I can run it back down, all this kind of stuff. And of course, Barb says, I thought I had it. I don't have it here. And so she said, well, and the receptionist said, well, maybe I can run up and get you the statement so that you have it. And then as we had talked, she said, or, you'll probably, are you going straight home? Because I can just call you when you get home and take your credit card number. That's not a problem at all. So we're going to be here. She said, basically, we're going to be here for another hour. So I'm happy to do that. And she said, Barb's wheels were turning. They were turning. And I think that was when Barb realized, okay, all right. So Barb said, sure, that's fine. Receptionist comes upstairs, fills us in. And she's like, she's not going to answer the phone when I call. And I said, no, she's probably not. But this is the thing. You have turned into somebody who is holding her accountable. You have to be relentless with your follow-up, basically, is what we were discussing. And they had not done that either because they were too busy or because they just didn't have the energy to deal with Barb. And of course, if Barb is not a patient that's going to be dismissed, then there is that sort of, well, what the heck am I working for anyways? But we did get permission from the doctor to go a little bit more hardcore. They knew about Barb. I mean, he knew what Barb was like. So what happened then is we waited about 20 minutes because she didn't live that far away. And we called, she didn't answer. So I left a message and, just basically, Barb, hey, just hoping that you had gone straight home and we're calling because I know you were going to grab that credit card. And what I had taught them to say was, we don't want this to slip between the cracks. And so we wanted to follow up on this as soon as possible. And then left a message, give us a call, phone number. She knows the phone number, all of that. So that was about 20 minutes after she left. Okay, so end of the day comes around and the receptionist, because I was going to suggest calling in the morning, and the receptionist said, you know what, I'm just going to call her. I'm going to call her again. And I said, okay, if you're comfortable with it. So she called, phone rang, and this was answering machine time back when we had answering machines, right? And so she's speaking in it and she's saying all the right things, Barb, just following up. We don't want to be a bother. It sounds like you're out. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and send you a statement, and you are welcome to call us at any time with a credit card number, and we'll go ahead and get that taken care of. And then what I had taught them to say after the phone calls, and the receptionist had done this on the last phone call, was to say, I'm going to go ahead and put in the chart that you had said that's how you like to pay your bills. And so we'll make sure to get that number from you next time. That way you don't have to worry about getting any statements from us. And that was end of the call. And then she, as was taught, made notes in the patient journal about this because they needed to keep track. See, what had happened was that Barb had told them so many lies, had so many excuses, had ditched out on the bill so many times that they just stopped recording it. And so when it came to catching Barb in whatever lie she was ready to do or provide, they didn't have it because they just stopped documenting it. So they started documenting it. And when you do that and you're reading from a list in front of the patient, you're making the patient feel awkward. Now, I'm not a fan of making patients feel awkward because we love our patients, right? But in this situation, it was really needed because the patient obviously was just trying to get one over on us. And this was not going to change. She was not going to change until she was called out. So next day, and I had left, I would travel day. I get a phone call from the receptionist that followed her with a trash can. And she said, I am following everybody with a trash bag to the parking lot. She said, because I'll be darned, Barb called middle of the morning and said, I'm going to give you my credit card number. She said, you guys were hounding me and I don't like it, but I'll go ahead and give it to you. That's all we wanted. So we got the credit card number, kept it securely. Every time she came in, we said, this is how much we're going to charge. She said, okay. And there we go. So my concern was Barb's credit card, when it expired, would she give us a new one? And I remember our engagement, our coaching contract had ended right around the time when that would have happened. And I remember, we would always talk about Barb. And I remember saying, you have to call me if Barb doesn't renew her credit card. I just need to know what happened with Barb. And I did get a call, but it was a call that said, Barb called us without us calling her and gave us the new credit card number, and it was just the new expiration date. But I was so impressed that Barb called them as soon as she got the credit card. So we had trained her. It was hard. I'm not going to say it's a success, like, because we couldn't get her to pay right at the time, but I was really impressed with how the girls handled it. They had no problem sort of fighting this pathology with a little bit of pathology, temporary pathology. But what it was we really understood where the patient was coming from. We met the patient where they were, which was not in a great place, but we also were able to show that the patient is not the one who sets the rules. And I think that's very important when you're managing a practice, because a lot of times it does feel like the patients make the rules. Sometimes you do feel helpless. Absolutely, Joe, from my first story, absolutely set the rules for every time he came in. I could do nothing with him. And, did I deserve that? Yeah, I do think I deserve that. I own that 100%. But there are patients who try to set the rules, and it's like, no, this is your office. Like, you know the rules. You know how you operate. And so Barb coming in does not have the right to change your protocol. You have to show that, this is how we do things. But there is a way to do it without being so, hammer meeting nail type thing. And in this case, we had to out Barb, and we did. And so I was really proud of the two of them. The doctor was actually really proud, and it gave me one of my best patient stories. Are you a dental biller feeling overwhelmed and isolated? I get it. The world of revenue cycle management is complex and ever-changing. That's why I created Dental Revenue Network. Our membership community was created to help you become a better revenue cycle manager and small business operator. Say goodbye to feeling alone and hello to a supportive community of dental billing professionals. Here's what you'll get: monthly billing-focused meetings with peers and experts, business building sessions to elevate your career, resource libraries tailored for billers and billing company owners, introductions to cutting-edge RCM technologies and companies, and a vibrant community for networking and support. Ready to transform your dental billing experience? Visit dentalrevenuenetwork.com today. Don't wait. Join us now and navigate the business of RCM with confidence. So I hope you enjoyed both of these situations. Hope you learned a little bit from them. Maybe there's some relationship to something that's happened in your life. And I'd love to hear your stories too. I do love hearing all of the variety of patient interactions that we have. But if you didn't learn anything, I hope you at least laughed with this story, because really that's the only way we can get through some of these patient interactions. So thank you so much for listening. Until the next time, thank you so much for being a part of Nobody Told Me That.
If you learned something new today, subscribing is the best way to support the channel and keep learning with us.
We're all super busy, so thank you for making time for me today. The show notes will have any links that we referenced in the episode. You can also find links for my book, events, and my online insurance course, Dental Insurance Design and Management. I speak often around the country on management and insurance issues. Come hang out with me in one of my classes. I promise you'll laugh and learn.